It's 2002 and 4 teenage attendees of Stocksbridge High School in Sheffield decided to form a band. They were among good company, as Def Leppard, The Human League, Hot Chocolate and Pulp had their origins rooted in the working class streets of the Steel City. The 4 teenagers were Alex Turner, Matthew Helders, Jamie Cook and Andy Nicholson. Turner, who was no stranger to music growing up with a music teacher father, was neighbours with Helders, who learnt the drums as, in his own words, that was the only thing left. When we started the band, none of us played anything. We just put it together. They all had guitars and I bought a drum kit after a bit. The band were initially instrumental only, with Alex on guitar, Andy on bass and Jamie, who coined the name Arctic Monkeys, picking up the second guitar. As children of the 90s, they liked hip-hop, rap, Britpop and garage rock, but it was the way they put it together that was quite unlike anyone else. Rehearsing out of Yellow Art Studios in Neep's End, the band quickly found a sound and played their first gig on the 13th of June 2003 at the Grapes, located on Trippett Lane in Sheffield city centre. Walking onto the stage to The Boss by James Brown, the band blasted their way through originals Ravey Ravey Club and Curtains Closed, before covering Fatboy Slim, The White Stripes, The Beatles, The Undertones, The Datsuns, The Vines, The Strokes, and ending with the Jimi Hendrix Experience. After a few more performances, the band began to record and started handing out an 18-track demo. As this was first given out at the Boardwalk, a bar/nightclub situated on the corner of Snake Hill and Bank Street, fans dubbed this EP The Boardwalk, until it eventually became the legendary Beneath the Boardwalk. Fans began file sharing the demo quickly, which gained the band a notoriety rarely seen for an unsigned act. BBC Radio and the British tabloid press began to pay attention, and the band released an EP under their own label, Bang Bang. The release was limited to 500 CDs and 1,000 7-inch records, but was also made available on the iTunes Music Store. It wasn't long after that the band played the Carling stage at Reading and Leeds Festival and signed with Domino in June 2005. They were attracted to the Domino owner Lawrence Bell, who ran the label from his flat and only signed bands that he personally liked. From that point to now, the band went from Nicholson to Nick O'Malley, have released 6 studio albums, Whatever People Say and That's What I'm Not, Favourite Worst Nightmare, Humbug, Suck It and See, AM, and Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, with the 7th album The Car set to be released on October 21st, 2022. They have over 7 million albums sold worldwide, 31.7 million monthly streams, a Mercury Prize, 7 Brits, 4 Gaffer Awards, an Ivor Novello, 22 Enemy Awards, 5 Q Awards, global tours, Olympic ceremony performances, Glastonbury headliners, LA parties, and so much more. Arctic Monkeys are the band of a generation. In this podcast, we're going to be studying each era, album by album, track by track, lyric by lyric, and of course, brick by brick.
We're Arctic Monkeys, this is Don't Believe the Hype.
That rock and roll, eh? Ladies! That sound means it's the end of the round. Time for the bonus question.
Cheers, dude.
That man just yawned. We're going to call it
Don't Believe the Hype.
Hello and welcome to Don't Believe the Hype, a brand new podcast taking a dip in the daydream that is the extensive back catalogue of Arctic Monkeys. I'm Nick Lee and I'll be joined each week by my good friend Dan Holt to analyse the influences, references and just have a general chat about the stories behind everything the band have ever done. And when we say everything, we really do mean everything. Dan, how are you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm very well, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not so bad.
You sound very well.
Yeah, that's very nice of you. No one ever says that I sound well. They always say I sound like I'm half dead or something. So this is an improvement. I'll take this.
No, you sounded enthusiastic. Yeah.
Well, that's the start. We've got a 7th album coming round the corner.
If I was going to say, I think that's why I'm also in a very good mood, is because I've been able to listen to a new Arctic Monkey song on repeat for the better part of 3 weeks. So it always puts me in a very good mood. Which nicely brings us on to. I was trying to do a smooth segue there. Didn't quite.
I've been trying that. I've been trying that for years, and it never works. Before the opening titles, we heard your little potted history of the early days of Arctic Monkeys. So what I thought we could do is kind of go right back and kind of tell people what the show's going to be about and kind of what we're going to be doing every week. Because I'm sure people will be tuning in thinking, how
Mhm.
are they going to fill the weeks? But you're going to tell them right now how we're going
Yep.
to fill the weeks, aren't you?
Yep, they're probably thinking, they're probably just gonna do an album, an episode, and just cram everything into there, and it'll be
That would be
done
the
in
sensible thing to
6
do.
weeks. That would make more sense, but we feel we have more material than that because we're obsessive. So we've spent the better part of 15 years preparing for this podcast, basically.
Yeah, pretty much that's about the size of it. So obviously, was it about 15 years ago that we met? Then it would have been, wouldn't it?
I might be. Wait, let me do the math because I might be making myself younger than I am, which I have a tendency to do. For no, actually, I think about 17 years ago. I think so. It was 2006. I started working at I won't name, but a very large supermarket chain here in the UK, specifically in Stockport, which is a small town just outside of Manchester. For those that don't know, it should be a city, I'd say, by the size of it. I think you'd agree with that, but it's a town. And I started working there and met Nick, who we both worked on the fruit and veg department, I believe. I'm giving a lot of history here of stuff that people don't care about, but this is longer than the Arctic Monkeys history was. But yeah, we started working there, and then we bonded. What I was getting to was we bonded over our love of quite new band at that stage, Arctic Monkeys, who I remember it was July 2006 that I started working there. So the Arctic Monkeys' first album must have only been out for like, I don't know, about 6 months or something at that point. What do you
I
reckon?
think at that point, yeah, because I'd been off for 4 months because I broke my leg playing football. And then so we'd had the first album, and
Yes,
we'd had
yes.
we'd had Who the Fuck Are Arctic Monkeys by that point as well. So we were still this was before the
Yes.
second album had even leaked.
Yeah, because I remember us actually. You mentioned that I'll touch on it briefly before we get there, but I remember when the second album leaked, being in your mum and dad's house, trying to listen to pirated versions of it on YouTube. But no, you're all thinking like, trying. Why was it so difficult? This was 2006. Things weren't as savvy as they are now with YouTube and the internet. So I remember we had to wait a long time to get the full Brainstorm or stuff like that. So yeah, I do remember that. But I think with Arctic Monkeys, it started around, I think it was kind of 2005 when you first started to really hear about them, wasn't it? I was still at school in my last sort of year at school, and before Arctic Monkeys came along, I was big into things like Blink-182 and punk and all that kind of sort of American sound. And before that, I hadn't really been into music. I think the first single I ever bought was Wild Wild West by Will Smith. So that should give you an indication into
Classic
how
of the
much
genre.
yeah, I mean, we don't talk about him anymore, but that man. It was his first single. I still loved it. I was a big Spice Girls fan, and then I got into punk, Blink-182, things like that. And then I remember I started to change a little bit. I heard like the Killers, Hot Fuss, and I started to think, oh, I kind of like this different stuff. And then somebody, I remember there was a fateful night on. I went to see what's the band called that does the Teenage Kicks? Teenage Kicks, what are they called?
The Undertones.
The Undertones. I went with my family to see the Undertones. It wasn't the original singer, Fergal Sharkey. It was like some other guy. I went to see the Undertones, and at that gig, we were in a bar before it, and my cousin handed me a CD, and he said, "This is a pirated album of a band that are gonna be huge." And I was like, "Oh right, okay." When you might like them, called the Arctic Monkeys. And thus, as I took that CD, the legend began. My life changed instantly, and here we are now. And yeah, I became obsessed, to say the least. And then I met you, and you were equally obsessed. And we became friends over that. And yeah, so I don't know. What can you remember your first hearing of them, or how you came about them?
It's the same with me. It was around the same time. So it was the Beneath the Boardwalk demos, which we will be talking about next week, dear listeners. So hang on to your hats for that. I was.
Exciting
So
stuff.
I kind of grew up listening to like Oasis, Blur. I was a proper Britpop kid, but not. I like the music, but I kind of wish I'd been a bit older at that time. Actually, living the cigarettes and alcohol lifestyle rather than having to like go to primary school and stuff.
Yeah.
And then obviously early
Yep.
2000s, it was obviously the Strokes kind of went kind of bigger over here than they were in America, and then that kind of paved the way for the Libertines, because up until then the top 40 charts over in the UK were just full of rubbish. It was just garage and
Yep.
breakbeat, Artful Dodger, Craig David, that sort of thing. And then Libertines kind of
People
brought
buying Will Smith singles. Yeah,
yeah,
dreadful. That was
just
contributing to awful music.
degenerates
Yeah,
buying
yeah.
Will Smith movie tie-ins.
It's not all bad though, because the second single I ever bought was Ant and Dec's World Cup release, "We're on the Ball." So it wasn't all crap that I bought.
You redeem yourself there, yeah, definitely, yeah, definitely shout about that one. I kind of got really heavily into the Libertines, and then obviously when they split up in less than amicable fashion, like their split was pretty much all over the newspapers on a daily basis. There's kind of a gap, there's kind of a vacuum, and we needed a band to fill it. The kind of, because I've always been one of those who I'm kind of obsessed with this idea of the kind of being the band of a generation. So you've kind of got, if you start from like the Smiths, Stone Roses, Oasis,
Yeah.
and then like Libertines / Arctic Monkeys are kind of like the next logical stop on that kind of cosmic bus ride for me. So it's the same. Yeah, I was playing five-a-side with my friend, five-a-side soccer, as we call it here in the UK for the transatlantic listeners. I was playing five-a-side, and yeah, just coming back with my mates and walking back, and my mate said, "Oh, have you listened to this?" Like, shared one of his headphones with me, and it was the Beneath the Boardwalk album. And then a couple of days later, I remember catching a bit of the top 40 on the radio, and it was straight in at number one. It's Arctic Monkeys, "I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor," which I don't think people appreciate because of the state of the pop charts nowadays. I don't think people appreciate just how unprecedented it was that
Yeah.
this band got into number one with no publicity. They didn't go on Top of the Pops or anything. They didn't go on any of the TV shows to promote it. And to go to number one like that was just boom, mental.
I remember it being very exciting. I remember that because they were I'd become obsessed with them pretty quick. And then I think they were on like the news and everything talking about it. Talking about this because it was like the fastest debut album, wasn't it? And single and stuff, and they were just everywhere. It was all very exciting. Yeah, like you say, no, they were the band of the generation. I think when you look back to that time and all the bands that were around that have now, vanished, that just couldn't get past that point of musically of progressing anymore, and that just shows the difference with. That's why when some people, and I'm sure there'll be some people listening that do that long for the old days, or maybe aren't as keen on the newer stuff. The reason they still exist is because they changed and progressed. In my opinion, they didn't just keep up that same trick. They had more to them, and like I think we've said this before, that the musical direction that they've gone in now isn't really much of a surprise when you dig into the roots of them, or you've been following them for years, which hopefully we'll touch on as we go through this. But yeah, so that's kind of our sort of both our histories. That we started a band together because of Arctic Monkeys. Not quite of a generational talent as Arctic Monkeys were, unfortunately.
No, not quite.
No, not many people have heard of us. Actually, it's it's good to be underground. But yeah,
just like Arctic Monkeys, we also refused to go on Top of the Pops, just as Arctic Monkeys did. So
yes, refused and weren't asked at the same time. First band ever to refuse and not be asked to go on Top of the Pops. Which, judging by some of the past hosting of Top of the Pops, I'm glad for. Actually, I'm glad we took that stance.
Yeah,
and also I think being the age that we were is important because of that album, the first album, and the lyrics, and like going to town, going out clubbing for our transatlantic listeners. I say going to town. People might not no one. Oh, they might do if they listen to Arctic Monkeys, I guess. Yeah, that was just that whole. It was like you were living in a moment of. Yeah, and Alex was narrating that moment. It was very, very strange, actually, when you look back to that sort of coming of age that we were and going out and having those songs about that. Actually, I think that's probably even Oasis and things like that. I suppose the songs weren't directly referencing your life for the most part, were they? So it was quite a strange thing, actually, for us to experience. I'd say to be going out living exactly what he's saying and getting those references.
Yeah, I mean, going back like to a couple of years before Arctic Monkeys kind of made it massive. I'd just done my GCSEs at school, which is the exams you do over here when you turn 16 and leave secondary school. And one of in our English classes, one of the things we had to study in the poetry module was John Cooper Clarke. And
Oh yes,
straight away, I was just taken with this guy, this John Cooper Clarke, absolutely obsessed with him. It really pleases me that he's become a proper national treasure now, and he's kind of having this resurgence on like main. He's on 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown quite a lot. He pops up on Would I Lie to You and other panel shows. He kind of had this bit of a resurgence now, which is fully deserved. So when Arctic Monkeys came along, it was kind of like. This is, and as we'll delve into over the coming weeks and months, there's a real link there between Arctic Monkeys and John Cooper Clarke, isn't there?
Yes, very much so. Even in later albums, we'll be able to delve into that. Some people might. I don't think a lot of people. I've seen a lot of stuff, and we won't get into it now. But that particular song that I'm referencing, I don't think a lot of people know where that comes from or the story behind it. But stay tuned for that in. Probably get there in about 2 years, so look forward to that one. But yeah, it's look up John Cooper Clarke. Anyone that doesn't know, just to give you a brief idea, he's kind of he's Manchester. Is he from Manchester?
Yeah,
Salford,
which is an issue for some people.
Salford.
Yeah.
A very important distinction, as the Joy Division might say. But he's actually in that film as well, isn't he? Just as a side note, in 24 Hour Party People, isn't he? We're doing his fucking Chicken Town. But yeah, no, definitely he was huge. I think one of the reasons that it's probably that if you're interested in that probably makes this being able to do a podcast like this. I've always thought the reason I was more compelled towards Arctic Monkeys, apart from liking the music, obviously, was that I'm always been quite interested in poetry and stories and stuff like that. And Alex's lyrics have a little bit more depth to them, I'd say, than the average song. Like more witty and stuff in the first album, but definitely from like Humbug on, there's a lot more there to delve into, isn't there, in terms of like sort of metaphors and the way he structures sentences and kind of does things. It's crazy, but yes, that's all obviously for the future. That's all exciting stuff. So I don't think we've said, have we? But the format really will be is we're gonna do and I suppose sort of you call it an album, but you could call it an era, I suppose, as well, that we'd do. So we'd do we're gonna do Beneath the Boardwalk next week, which is we're just gonna do the tracks off Beneath the Boardwalk that weren't released as a single or on the album. So we're just going to do kind of these very early demos, basically, of songs that you might not have even heard before to some people. But and then we'll be delving into a track a week from whatever people say I am. That's what I'm not. So we'll be doing the View from the Afternoon first. And then when we finish the album, we'll be going through each B-side on a weekly basis until we reach the end of that era. And then we'll jump into the next era, which is The Favourite Worst Nightmare, and so on. And so on. So if you were wondering how we get so much mileage out of it, that's why. We're doing an episode a track.
For the youngsters that are listening, the Utes who might not know what a B-side is, it stems from the early days when singles used to be released as a vinyl record, and the single would be on the first side, but then you'd have another side with nothing on it. So bands would normally record a B-side that didn't tend to appear on an album, and that's something that the Arctic Monkeys are kind of big proponents of in the modern day.
That's made me feel really old that you just have to explain what a B-side is. And it was already a bit of an old concept when we were younger, so it's made me even feel like doubly old. But yeah, on streaming, of course, no B-sides. Well, Arctic Monkeys do not many bands. I mean, they didn't really have any for the last album, did they? There was one, which is a song that I know a lot about. We'll get there again. Stick around for a few years. You'll get to hear my take on that. But yeah, I think they do the reason we've included the B-sides in with this is because I think Arctic Monkeys B-sides are probably just as worth discussing as the album tracks for the most part.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It almost takes me back to Oasis in a way. For people unfamiliar, Oasis actually released an album called The Master Plan, which was just B-sides and was better than most bands' like main albums, which was kind of astonishing at the time that these songs were deemed not good enough for an album and have just gone on to be absolute classics. And it's very much a similar kind of thing with. I know it's along in the Arctic Monkeys fandom, a lot of people are obsessed with a lot of the early B-sides in particular. So it'll be good to kind of revive some of those, I think.
Yeah, they'll be good to speak to, and we'll be doing them after we finish the album, and then we'll do sort of a wrap up of the whole era where we'll discuss and have our takes on our favorite tracks and things like that. But yeah, no, I thought for a minute there you were going to say, when you said Oasis, and then you said, for anyone that doesn't know, I thought you were going to say Oasis were a 4-piece from Manchester. I don't know if you necessarily need to mansplain that to everyone, but yeah, or womansplain. Specific.
But I think when you mentioned how at the end of once we've done each album, we'll kind of wrap up the era with a special episode. I think what we'll do with that special episode is invite our listeners to get in touch with some conversation points for us. They can give us their thoughts on what we've been saying and on that particular era. So if you do want to get in touch with us, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at Arctic Podcast. And if you want to email us, just email arcticmonkeyspodcast@gmail.com and that will bounce straight to us via the information superhighway, which is good, isn't it?
Yeah. Probably not going to be more insightful than what we have to say, but we'll give you a try. We'll give you a go. That's all you can ask for, really.
Give you a go.
You know,
we might even set up the voice message facility as well. You can leave voice messages for podcasts on Anchor. So maybe we'll let people give us a little message. As long as you don't swear at us.
Keep it clean.
We've got girlfriends to swear at us. We don't need you to do it as well.
Yeah. Keep it clean. Come on.
Yeah.
But no, absolutely no. Do get in touch because occasionally we'll post a little insight into a song, and I always get some great comments on there. Whenever I do that, so it's always good to and some things that surprise me, so it's always good to hear other people. And also I think people should be aware of the fact that we hadn't seen each other for a few years in particular before this, so it's not like the things that we're going to be discussing are kind of tired in a conversation between us. There are actually probably going to be quite a few things that we've never discussed, so it's going to be interesting for us as we go as well. So it's not going to be kind of overly rehearsed and us pretending to hear an insight that I've heard Nick make drunk 10 times already in the past year. So yeah, it's going to be fresh and exciting.
I deliberately didn't speak to you for 10 years just so we could keep this fresh.
Yeah. It was, who knew? It was, that was all part of the plan. Yeah. And then Arctic Monkeys didn't even do an album for 5 years of that, so they were in on it too. Yeah. But no, it is exciting times. Obviously, we talk about the past. I don't want to get too much into our sort of thoughts on Arctic Monkeys because I think there's a lot to mine as we go, but obviously I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we are both fans of the newer material, and in particular, what do you make of the new single that obviously came out a couple of weeks ago?
I think it's different for us as like super fans, as super Arctic Monkeys nerds. It's kind of we've kind of seen the trajectory. We've kind of seen how the sound has evolved. So we weren't shocked by it. But a friend of mine who hasn't listened since the first album was shocked and appalled by it. He's like, when did this happen?
This was just the first album.
Yeah.
He went from not listening to them since the first album for 10 years to jumping into There Better Be a Mirror Ball. I mean, that was a shock.
Yeah, you're asking for trouble, aren't you? But that's it. You can kind of see the signs of that kind of change of sound from very early on, as we'll kind of point out in the coming weeks and months. You could see it coming. Yeah. It's not that much of a shock if you kind of follow things.
Yeah, and I also don't think it's. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely, it isn't much of a shock. And as we'll go, there's one song in particular on the first album that I think was perhaps one of the early signs of this kind of sound. But in a way, there's as you say, with us being kind of super fans, it's one of those things where we're prepared for it. But even I, like, so for Tranquility Base, even I, when I first heard the first track, I was kind of shocked, But then I think these albums, they take just a little bit more listening to. It's a bit more like, like a sort of a more in-depth book or a film or something. You've just got to give it a couple more tries, and there's nothing wrong with that, because there's plenty of bands that are like that, classic bands there. They just take that. Whereas something like I Am is just a little bit more viscerally good. As soon as you hear it, it's exciting straight away. So it's just about giving it a chance and going. Well, I appreciate that some people won't like that, but I would that sound. But I would hope that they would stick around and listen to our insights on that, and maybe we can change a few hearts and minds. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, and also you can feel free to send any feedback about songs that you don't when we're doing them as well. Any negatives as well. We've got a shredder. No, I'm joking. But we will take any kind of. For any young people listening, a shredder is a device that you use to discard a paper. Just get that one out of the way. Paper used to be this thing that we had. Move on. But yeah, it's no. I think. But yeah, we don't want to get too much into the insights in a relationship, but I think it's good just to say that we're both fans of that newer stuff, and particularly the new single. I have to say, I'm slightly obsessed with. I love it. But as somebody who's always loved crooner music and maybe a bit of jazz and stuff, I am predisposed to the thought of Alex doing that is 10 times even more exciting to me. So yeah. I understand people that don't.
I think we've kind of got the because obviously we will cover the various side projects. I say various side projects. We'll cover Last Shadow Puppets as we go on as well, which is kind of one of the first inklings of kind of Alex kind of producing these influences for people, like showing what his influences are. This is for an artist who's kind of always in the past kind of shied away from talking about his inspirations and stuff like that. Starting the Last Shadow Puppets with Miles Kane was kind of the point where he started like wearing his influences on his sleeve and kind of telling people, like doing curated playlists for Spotify and that sort of thing, where he's saying what he's into. So if you've kind of taken what he's said on board and listened to the stuff, then I think the new stuff won't be much of a departure for you. You'll see it coming.
Yeah, even down to like something like that. Helders did that album where he did the drums. I can't remember what it's called. It had a name. They release a different one every year. Every different artist doing their version of songs. The name escapes me, but Helders did that back in the day, and he, there was a thing at the start of it of Alex reading like a little story he'd written called "The Choice of Free," which maybe we'll play or I'll recite one day on the podcast. But that's just little things like that, like you say, that just made him a little bit. You just knew there was something more there, or there'd be a new sound. But definitely Last Shadow Puppets with that, or Submarine as well, obviously. But I think so we're going to be doing a different track every week. We're going to be going deep dive into each song. This first one, just an introduction, a little bit more scattered. We're just kind of chatting about it here and introducing you to us. But we're going to be doing deep dives in each song. So if you're kind of interested in, finding things out or hearing opinions on the songs, or what you always wondered what that lyric might mean, and maybe we can try and add a bit of insight on that, whether it be right or wrong as well, because there's nothing to say that what we think it means is art's conjecture, isn't it? So it's just an opinion. But I think less so with the first album and stuff. I think we'll be able to pretty much nail down what those songs are about, but later on certainly. But just to kind of let you know a little bit more about us as well, I was going to ask you, Nick, what is your favourite Arctic Monkeys song? And we should clarify this, as we've already said, that these do change on a daily basis. So it'll just be what happens to be Nick's favourite song today, as I'm sure a lot of Arctic Monkeys fans can relate to that. But what is your favourite Arctic Monkeys song of all time today?
Well, I'm glad you kind of pointed out that it changed on a daily basis. But I think probably like 4 out of 7 days of the week, it'd be Cornerstone. I think it's interesting. It came, obviously, it was on album number 3, Humbug, which was the first sign of them really starting to change the sound. I think. I mean, the first in your face sign, anyway. The sound was really changing. but
First
it's
non-B side, really, you could say, couldn't you?
yeah. And it kind of retains the lyrical themes that they've had from the very start. That whole thing. It's about being in love and being horny, which is what he's talking about a lot of the time, which I don't think people realize. I think
Scarily a lot of the time. He's a doctor.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think there's just something you'd think of all the Arctic Monkey stuff. That's the type of one you can get bored of, with it being a slower song and everything. But seeing videos of them playing it live, even recently, it just seems to get elevated every time. It's fantastic. I know Jamie Cook on the electric guitar, ladies and gentlemen, gets a fair bit of stick because he might not be the most technical guitarist. In the same way that Meg White got a lot of stick in the White Stripes. I think
Yeah.
Jamie kind of gets a bit of a beating,
Yeah.
but I think that the tone of his solo on Cornerstone is absolutely. I adore that song. Can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I think Jamie gets a lot of stick, but he brings his own influences, and they're all there for a reason. They all bring something to that,
Yeah.
don't they? As we'll probably get into as we go along as well. But it's interesting that you picked that song. I think for a couple of reasons. One is that on Humbug, that and Secret Door are the only two songs not produced by Josh Homme or Josh Homme. Yeah. They were actually produced by James Ford, the usual producer. Probably for good reason that they probably felt like those two melodic-y songs probably weren't right for maybe Josh to get his claws into. It's interesting for a second reason in that my favorite Arctic Monkeys song, 4 times out of 5. Then I'm getting all Arctic Monkeys in my head. 4 days out of 4 days of the week would be Suck It and See. So it's interesting you went for Cornerstone, because Suck It and See is another melodic song. That is it's not an under the radar song. It's a very big song of theirs, but it's just, for me, that song is their best melodic piece that they've done in terms of lyrics and technical and a feeling. That whole so just to say as well, my favorite album is the Suck It and See album, which is not probably one that a lot of people maybe go for, but it's just that sound, that melodic sound. It just always makes me happy, and it has that kind of summary, and I just think his lyrics on that are spectacular. As well, I'm very excited to get into that album. It's kind of got the breakup and love songs that I think he doesn't get the credit for some of the lyrics on that album relating to love and sex and breakups and things like that. If it was like Ed Sheeran singing it or something, get the credit. But yeah, I don't think they get that. But yes, so that's my favorite album. I think I know what your favorite album is, but would you like to reveal?
Yeah, it's purely based on the reasons we spoke about before. It's whatever people say. That's what I'm not. Purely because I mean, it sounds kind of pretentious to say it changed my life, but I think it did. Just that sort of moment in time where you're living an album. That's it. I kind of. But at no point when it came out did I think they'd still be singing about those themes in like 15 years' time, unlike some. So that's something.
Yeah, absolutely. I can completely as I was saying before about that, we were living it in the moment, so it adds that. And, it's not an album, I don't put it as my favorite, but it nostalgically, absolutely, it's my favorite album of all time to remind me of a time and a place, certainly. But it's but again, interesting that you picked that one and I picked Suck It and See, because I think that aside from the early album, Suck It and See is probably the wittiest one as well lyrically after that. He really went back to a kind of wittiness in there, I think, which he always has, to be fair. It was more prominent in this. Yeah, I can see why that would be your favorite. I don't think it's pretentious to say it changed your life, because I think there's plenty of people think it's pretentious to say that because it's Arctic Monkeys. If for some reason you're not allowed to say stuff like that about them, I find in England anyway. Whereas people say Oasis changed their life, or the Stone Roses changed their life all the time. So, but I definitely think it did, and it does remind me of a time and a place as well. So I could see why that would be a favorite.
But with you saying yours is Suck It and See, then I mean, how did you feel when? Obviously, I think if I remember rightly, the first preview that we got of that album was Brick by Brick, which I mean, we'll get into the background when we cover that song, but just in short, they basically Alex
Yeah.
basically challenged himself to write a song with as few words in it as possible, and just
Yeah.
that's what came out of it.
It was a troll, wasn't it, really, when they dropped that single, because people were so furious about Humbug, a certain section of the fan base, we should say. Boo. But no, they were, they were very down about Humbug. And then the next single you're gonna hear for the next album is Brick by Brick. People have just lost their minds and just thought, oh my God, this is insane. I can't believe how bad they've gone. They've lost it. Yeah, they've completely lost it. And I thought, I think because I hadn't ever left them, and because I'm so entrenched in them, and you watch all the things, and you get an idea of their sense of humor and who they are from things they did, like Brit Award speeches, and remember Matt Helders used to release those little Helders clips on tour and stuff. You get a sense of the comedy that they have with each other, and I think I just sense that it was a joke, and that's what, you know what I mean. And I think that's what I love about them, is that they don't really take themselves too seriously, and they do have a laugh with it. That Suck It and See album, some of the lyrics are insane funny that nobody could get away with writing except Alex. Like just don't sit down because I move your chair, for example. The lyrics in
that was the first single, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So again, people heard that and thought, oh my God, what's going on? But I just find that whole era really exciting. It's what led to what came after as well, I think. But that, and I should say as well, in terms of an exciting moment, as we're talking about moments, is I remember very specific the moment that Are You Mine came out, and I remember hearing it and being and just thinking, as much as I love them and I know what they're capable of, this song is just the most fucking coolest song I've ever heard in my life. Like, this is just so cool, and the video is so cool, and it's like they'd just gone into the stratosphere at that point, and I was like, wow. Even I couldn't have it was just a pure rock. Like, even any people that don't like them like that song. You can't not like that song. It's just a cool song. So yeah, that was a moment as well. They've always provided me with moments. So
Nope. And that the Are You Mine video as well. They kind of invented carpool karaoke as well. So take that, Corden.
Take it away, boys. That guy. Yeah, they did, didn't they? It wasn't long after that either, and wouldn't put anything past Corden. They would steal it from them. And also, great mentioning Corden. Great awkward Last Shadow Puppets interview with Corden as well during the last album. Really awkward. Yeah. But yeah, they did, didn't they? And I should also say that the Are You Mine video is my favorite video, since we've already touched on it. And I just think that video was just such a moment for them. And the whole video is designed around showing that Alex had a new tattoo and he had a new haircut. That was basically what that whole video was for. Yeah. And he had a new model girlfriend, and they were all having a great time in LA, and why not? But there is also a live video of Are You Mine shot in South America, which is an excellent video as well. It's like a one shot following them around the stage, which is just amazing. Insane video as well. But yeah, my favorites. What's your favorite Arctic Monkeys video? Because I always remember they were always a good they were always an exciting, when the single came out in the video, that was always exciting. Yeah,
this was it, because they were always straight from the start. They were always very in control of. I don't want to say the brand, but I say that their image. It was always carefully curated. I mean, from getting Shane Meadows involved.
Yeah.
Right, on for Fluorescent Adolescent and stuff, and you just think, like, some big name actors as well, like Paddy Considine, who's currently absolutely smashing it out the park in the Game of Thrones prequel. Stephen Graham, just big. Richard Ayoade, of course, directing videos as well. It's just they got into bed with all the right people. It's just, but in terms of a favorite video, see, part of me can't look past I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor, because it was just, I mean, to start with the words "Don't Believe the Hype" just showed such a level of self-awareness early on, and the old grey whistle test aesthetic from it as well. Kind of, it got it to the stage where my mum liked it, because she grew up watching the old grey whistle test and stuff like that. But I don't want to say Cornerstone again, because I've already said it. I've already said it for my favourite song, but the Cornerstone video is just an absolute masterpiece. how to make a music video on like 50 quid. You know what I mean? You don't need a big budget to make a memorable music video. And that was kind of the first time. In fact, that may actually have been the first time, because most of the videos were, the band were in it to a minimal extent. They weren't popping up in the videos as much, but this was just Alex for like 3 minutes or so, which is never a bad thing. That's always good.
Never. And they did a lot of videos that were like that, didn't they? In the early, I should just say though, for anyone that doesn't know what the old grey whistle test is, it was a show on the BBC in the 70s hosted by paedophiles. No, I'm joking. Cut that out. It was a show in the 70s where bands could showcase their music. Well, it was kind of like a cooler Top of the Pops, wasn't it? In a way,
yeah, because on Old Grey Whistle Test, they played live on there, whereas Top of the Pops was miming. So Old Grey Whistle Test was like the closest thing to it now is Later with Jules Holland, which incidentally, when I Bet You Look Good on a Dance Floor hit #1, they didn't do Top of the Pops, but they did Later with Jules Holland, and they did an interview on Pop World with Simon Amstell. So that kind of also, with the Simon Amstell and Pop World thing, it kind of shows you what their sense of humour was, that they were kind of, into the kind of ironic, taking the piss out of themselves kind of thing.
Yeah, and that whole interview is that, isn't it, really? It was obviously just a big piss take. And I think, again, people then labelled them as awkward to interview, but I think if you know them, you know that probably Simon Amstell was in on that, and it was on purpose, wasn't it, to be a bit awkward? But
especially as we're both fans of Simon Amstell as well, and kind of knowing.
Well, it was all that stuff is. Anyone that was a part of that time here in the UK and that we reference going up, but also that Simon Amstell and Rich Dyward and all these things were just part of that. It was just that was the zeitgeist at the time, wasn't it? That was just everything was going on. And I think as well, the Bet You Look on the Dance Floor video kind of invest like that. And I just think, they really tapped into a kind of a working class thing with that video as well. It was weird, just the way it was shot. They said a lot with that one video, which set the stall out for their career, really, didn't it? They know how to control their own image and who they are, which is one of the things, right from day one. Which is why we called the podcast "Don't Believe the Hype," because it was a good mantra for them to have.
Yeah, it's where it all started, and that's exactly where we're starting, which I think was the best place to start. I mean, from the start, it's probably the best place to start, like historically.
Usually. Oh, wait, are you doing a lyric then? Was there a lyric? Were you trying to get a lyric out then?
No. I'm saving
a lyric. Oh no, sorry. I was thinking of
Middle of Adventure.
Middle of
is
Adventure.
The perfect place to start. Yeah. This will happen quite a lot, people. Just let you know, we will accidentally just segue into Arctic Monkeys lyrics and just general wondering. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, definitely. And I think anyone that wants to listen to this will understand that. I think they'll do it on a regular basis. But it's a nice segue into now. This is an impossible task, so I went a bit around of your favorite lyric. I picked one, and I picked it for a reason. It's not my favorite lyric. I'm just going to say that now. There's far too many. I could spend all day looking at them and change my mind, on every song, probably. Different lyrics I like for different reasons, but the one that I went with, and the reason I went with it for is, so the lyric that I went with is, the next time that I caught my own reflection, it was on its way to meet you, thinking of excuses to postpone. Now, obviously, from Crying Lightning. I picked that lyric because I think that was the first song that we heard. Zane Lowe, another person from that time, good friends with them. Zane Lowe played it before Humbug came out, and that's kind of heard that, and everyone still loved that. Was before people disliked Humbug, and people thought, "Wow, what a tune!" Because it is. But that lyric was the first time that, although I knew he was a great lyricist, that he did something where he, and it'll be something that I'll reference a lot, probably a lot. Well, it sounds like Cilla Black. For our younger listeners, Cilla Black, I'll reference it a lot, is that he'll, instead of just writing a lyric somebody might write, which is, I couldn't believe that I was agreeing to see you again, or something like that. Obviously, better than that. That's crap. But something like that. He takes something that you could hear quite mundanely, and he twists it, and he changes it, and he creates an image in your head, which is, the next time that I caught my reflection, it was on its way to meet you. It's just this really different way of saying that same line, you know. For example, he does it again in Arabella when instead of just saying she has me wrapped around her little finger, he says she has a helter skelter on a little finger and I ride it endlessly. Just changes it and makes it into something else and puts an image in your head. And I just think that was the first time we heard him do that to that extent. So that's why I picked it as a favorite lyric. And I hope that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. I mean, it does to me, and it probably will to the listeners.
Yeah. The people listening are going, man, I didn't realize it'd be this nerdy. These two losers. Alex is probably listening, going, Jesus, I didn't realize people took it this seriously.
I don't think Alex is listening. I don't think he owns a computer or a phone or anything.
Maybe after Tranquility Base, he decided to buy a computer.
Yeah. Well, remember that time he got
famously
sucked into a hole by a handheld device?
Hey, we did it again. That's the third time in 5 minutes. We're gonna need a buzzer, like a little every time we say a lyric.
Klaxon thing, yeah.
To go up, yeah. But yeah, no. So what's your Did you have a favorite lyric? Which obviously isn't your favorite lyric, but you know.
So I was thinking about this today, and I was going to go for, I launch my fragrance called Integrity. I sell the fact that I can't be bought, because not only is it just a cool little concept, but it's Arctic Monkeys. It is, they can't be bought. You know what I mean? It is them all over. They're in control of their own thing. But in the end, like kind of fitting in with the theme of this introductory episode, where I think I've displayed my love for the first album. There's only music so that there's new ringtones. I just couldn't get past that at the time, and I still can't now, because that was for an album that was rooted in truth. That was rooted in truth even more than everything else, because that was the case at the time. People would have a song as their ringtone.
It really was. People won't even understand that now, will they? But it really did. It really was. Especially when you're from a particular area and around certain types of people, that was what it was at the time, wasn't it?
My phone's been on silent for like 10 years.
Yeah, do not disturb. That's what's going to be on my epitaph on my gravestone. Do not disturb. Leave me alone. If it's not a new Arctic Monkeys release, don't bother.
There's so many lyrics I could have picked from A Certain Romance. There's just so much I could have picked from there. But listening to it again like this afternoon, that just keeps jumping out at me.
No, we're gonna have a good time when we get to that song. I think, definitely. But no, I can get that. And the first one you said as well, that that's one of my favorite lyrics off that album. Fragrance called Integrity. But you know who always, whenever I hear that lyric, like the image I get in my head instantly, even from the first time I listened to it, was David Beckham. Like for some reason, whenever I hear that line, I just get David Beckham with an aftershave. I can imagine David Beckham releasing like a Integrity by David Beckham, and it's just pure irony that he isn't getting, you know. But that's who I think of those sort of celebrities, and but we don't have to delve in too deep into it because we will be doing that eventually anyway.
It's interesting that the contrast between the lyrics that we've both picked there, because the one I've picked from A Certain Romance is just you know what he's saying straight away, but you can just see him getting more and more abstract, you know, getting to the point where you're having to think. And there are various interpretations of stuff. Yeah,
it's a difference between sort of clever, witty lines in the first one that are just really clever, and like, you know, even something like, you know, his bird said it's amazing this wall that's left is the proof that love's not only blind but deaf. You know, wow, what a line. And to get into like the later stuff where, like you say, there's a little bit more depth there, and he's kind of he's hid the reference in a metaphor, and then twisted it and changed it. And I think there is a quote. I will find it. I think it was Alex Turner explaining how John Lennon writes lyrics in his solo albums, and the way he described John Lennon style of writing lyrics is exactly how Alex writes lyrics from Humbug onwards. And I will try and find it. So this is Alex on John Lennon. He said about Come Together, I've heard that song 1,000 times before, but there's not one word in that song that logically leads into the next one. It's all a jumble. But it's not just, if you know what I mean. He paints you a picture and puts you in this place. He's got a way of leading you somewhere with these unusual words that don't make sense, but also make perfect fucking sense, which I think quite nicely describes Alex, I'd say.
Yeah, you mentioned Are You Mine earlier. and I think that was the one where he mentioned taking inspiration from a lot of rappers, where they'll kind of set something up and then have it in the next line. So it was Puppet on a String, Tracy Island, next line, Time Traveling Diamond. And it's
Yeah.
that picking influences from everywhere. So at first, as you've pointed out, from John Lennon, one of the greatest lyricists and musicians of all time, and then picking it from rap. And the rap thing obviously comes across a lot in the first album as well. It's clear they're listening to like Dizzy Rascal and Roots Maneuver, and Dizzy Rascal fits into the
Roots
Turner
Maneuver,
verse
yeah.
as well, because he'll be coming up as well.
Oh, we'll get to Dizzy.
Hello, Dizzy.
We'll get to Dizzy, and just to tease people on Dizzy, there's a great story about a karaoke evening with Dizzy Rascal. So you just wait for that. But yeah, we'll get to Dizzy. Oh yeah. But yeah, no, I think hearing his thoughts on stuff, and that's a great example of the Are You Mine one, because it is what he said about rap and how that, because again, he could have just said, she's got me like a puppet on a string, but he takes the metaphor and then he flips the words around and creates a real image with it. So he certainly crafted that skill. And to go back to what we were saying about how hard it is to do those kind of lyrics that he does, so I will tell this story. It's a bit embarrassing, but I will tell it because I think people might find it funny. But when I was in a band, another unsuccessful band, it was around the Suck It and See time, and obviously in Suck It and See he says about you're rarer than a can of dandelion and burdock, and all the other girls are just post-mixed lemonade. Great. And I wrote a lyric that was something like, you've got me feeling like Superman on Lucasade, or something like that. Now, when Alex does it, it's really cool and he does it really well. When I did it, I got laughed at in the recording studio by fellow manmates and told to change that lyric. So, there is a certain way to do it.
Yeah. It's almost like there's a difference between you and Alex. It's not fair.
Well, one day he'll realise that he needs me to write better lyrics. Yeah. There's a slight difference. I wouldn't say, it's a huge gulf between us. But yeah, no, that was my attempt at doing that kind of. I think the reason why we were so unsuccessful in bands is because I was only just trying to be like Alex rather than finding my own voice, which is the problem with being too obsessed, I suppose, isn't it? Plus lack of talent. That was another huge factor.
I think that's why Little Man Tate didn't last.
Ah, bless him. Well, we'll do I'm sure there's a Little Man Tate podcast out there, isn't there? But, maybe not. On the side note, that would be a good podcast, just going through like all those songs from the early 2000s and just seeing how they land now. Or playing them to youths of today. Yeah, go and just making young people now that like the 1975 and stuff listen to it, this was great at the time. But yeah, what was what's your best gig you've ever been to? And I should say, by the way, that we have been to three. No, I want to say three. I'm going to say 3 Arctic Monkeys gigs together. I believe.
Yeah.
I know we went to the Cricket Club, which was in Manchester, which was an all-day event featuring such acts as the Parrots, the Coral, Amy Winehouse, and Supergrass and Arctic Monkeys back in the Favourite Worst Nightmare era.
£25. 25 English pounds for all. You couldn't see one of them for 25. You couldn't see Amy Winehouse. Dream, wasn't it? We went to that together. We also saw them at the GMX, and I think we've been at the Arena together. It might have been the Suck It and See tour.
I think it was. I think we inadvertently were there at the same time because you met up with someone who we both know as a mutual friend, and it was a Suck It and See, wasn't it, album, which, as we know now, is my favourite era. But what was your favourite gig that you've been to?
That I've been to, it would have to be the Cricket
Ground.
Of
Arctic Monkeys, obviously. Yeah.
I was going to say I could be here all night.
You're waiting for something else.
No, it'd have to be the Cricket Ground. Yeah, that was not to say they're not top of the game now, but they just had that swagger where they just weren't bothered. They just had 2 albums of absolute tunes and just came out top there. I mean, I'm a sucker for like an all-day outdoor gig anyway. Like it's hard work to find kind of an outdoor all-day gig that I've not enjoyed, but that was just peak Arctic Monkeys. And obviously that was, I think that served as the Manchester gig for the Favourite Worst Nightmare tour. There was no arena gig like there was now. It was the Cricket Ground and then the GMX not long later.
Yeah, the GMX was that same album, wasn't it? if you recall,
And obviously the
supported by the
Apollo as well.
Horrors, who got booed off stage.
Yes, and Alex Turner
Yeah,
introduced D is for dangerous by saying D is for dickheads throwing shit at the Horrors, which
he did, yeah.
has stuck in my head for some reason.
No, I remember that too. Yeah, the G-Mix was a good one. Yeah, I don't want to talk about Live at the Apollo because we foolishly didn't go. Anyway, but yeah, no, that was the G-Mix was an interesting one. Do you remember as well that we were furious because we went to there's a club. If anyone ever comes to Manchester, there's a student club called the Venue where they had the after party. You know, it's not really the after party, but the after party. And we went and we found out that the night before, because they played 2 nights at the G-Mix, the night before Arctic Monkeys and the Horrors had come to the Venue. So if we'd gone to the gig the night before and then gone to the Venue, there's a strong chance we would have actually met them. Which,
Still
I'm
keeps
kind
me
of
up
glad
at
of, because
night,
I think. Yeah, I don't know what I'd say. I always think this when I meet him, I'd probably just go like, I love you.
Yeah.
There's not in my head. I'm gonna go. Oh, I think that actually some of the lyrics on Humbug are some of one of a generational kind, and pull out a list and sit down with him and have a cup of coffee and like go through the lyrics and my interpretations of them. And he'll go, "Wow, great! Do you want to be mates?" And we'll go and talk together. And yeah, but I'd just literally just go. I'd probably throw up or something. But yeah, no, that's. That was a good one. My favorite gig was actually another outdoor gig, all day one. Unfortunately, you weren't there that I know of. But Don Valley in Sheffield was a monumentous gig. I would say best gig I've ever been to ever. I would say because it was just this time before AM, so before they kind of went into that next level of global fame, and they played every song. They played every song. It was magical. They played every song. Miles Kane came on stage on a motorbike, on a Harley Davidson to do 505. There was a glorious moment where me and a friend, we bumped into a guy who was on his own, and we just all were so happy to be together. And he turned at one point, he went like, "Humbug's my favorite album," and I was like, "I love Humbug too." And it was like, "Yeah, fuck everyone else. They don't love Humbug, do they?" And then there was a moment when they played every other song. And Alex said, "This is our last song." And they play. I turned to this random guy, never met him before, and I went, "Oh my god, they played every song but this." And he went, "Yeah, they played every song. It must be." And then the drums to A Certain Romance started, and we both were just like, just amazing day to be in their hometown as well, obviously, and stuff. Yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better day than that. Best gig I've ever been to. But I am still very upset about Live at the Apollo. But my biggest, probably, if I could go to a gig, it would have been Glastonbury 2013. Is my favorite gig that I've seen on TV that I wish I'd been at.
That was going to be my next question, because I'm very conscious that we're like very close to an hour, so we'll have to get close to wrapping things up. But that was some editing to be done. Is like of all the gigs, which is the one that you didn't go to that you were, and that was just a band at the peak of the powers. Alex Turner settled into who he was. He kind of adopted this new persona, this kind of onstage persona in kind of the same way David Bowie did so many times over his career, and it was just I know it kind of made a lot of the more casual fans and casual observers, they kind of cringed at it a bit. But that was just a band at the peak of the power.
I don't know why though, because
AM came out as well.
Yeah, before AM. That's the amazing thing about that gig. It was before AM. It's easy to forget that. But
they opened the gig with a song that hadn't come out yet. They opened it with "You All I Know."
And everyone knew what it was though.
Yeah,
everyone knew the riff though, because it's just that kind of riff that you just know. Like it's an incredible riff. But yeah, no, I think with that, I can kind of get where some people that don't know might cringe at certain things and not get what they're trying to do. But I think with that, I don't think there was anything in that performance that was cringeworthy. I'd say it was a perfect set almost. And a little joke about he's going to go into, because Chris Martin's at the side of the stage and he goes to play Yellow and stuff. It's like, it's very self-aware, not taking himself too seriously. But yeah, no, as we've gone on a while, I suppose just to kind of wrap it up, do you have this is a very hard one to answer, but I've kind of pulled one out again. It wouldn't be the same every day again, but your sort of favorite musical moment. We talk a lot about the lyrics, but we haven't kind of referenced a favorite musical moment. And while you're thinking, I'll give you mine.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, give me some
yeah.
inspiration here, man.
Oh, so my favorite musical moment that I could think of, because I want to give someone else some props because we talked a lot about Alex. So, but don't worry, as we go through this podcast, each episode, we will delve into every band member's performance in that song and give them all equal dues. It's just easy on an overview to talk about Alex more. In Pretty Visitors, the drums, I mean, the verses and the choruses are basically just a drum fill. The whole song is a drum fill. There's no normal drum beat in there. Every single drum you hear is some kind of drum fill, which I've never heard that kind of the way Alex is sort of doing his singing, rapping over what is just a drum fill. And yeah, I just think the drumming in that song, I think the drumming on that album is phenomenal. But yeah, that will be my favorite, I'd say, musical moment. Old Helders.
Because I don't think Helders gets enough respect from kind of like the wider
Absolutely
kind of
not.
community of music fans. I mean, he's drummed for P. Diddy, for Lady Gaga, for Iggy Pop. That is a man who knows how to change it up when he needs to. And I
Yeah.
think as much as we're
yeah.
clearly massive fans of Alex, I think you're going to see as this show kind of progresses and evolves. I think we're going to be showing a fair bit of love to the other band members who deserve all the credit in the world.
Love all of them.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
have equal love for all of them.
Yeah, Pretty Visitors is peak Helders. I think Pretty Visitors and Brianstorm for me are those two Helders led tunes that are just like, yeah, you've got it, mate. You've got the balls.
Yeah, and
it will balls into this, but you know.
Well, as we delve into more the newer stuff as well, I think a lot of people get upset that Helders isn't as prominent. They say so. As we get into that, we can discuss that and my thoughts on how he actually is more prominent than you think. But yeah, we'll definitely be going through each member. I think each member will get his fair dues. I think we love all of them equally, and we could say stuff like that. Just to give people that idea that I think as much as I love the first album, I think the band wouldn't be where they are now without Nick O'Malley joining and his bass style. And Jamie, I love Jamie as well. So yeah, everyone will get their dues.
So yeah. I've been having a think then, Matt. In terms of musical moment, mine's quite a silly one actually compared to yours. You've backed yours up, and yours is a proper the kind of muso's opinion. It's like, yeah, I know my music, and this is my opinion. mine weirdly enough.
Yeah, go on.
Well, compared
if you want me to get well, I could have done this. My backup was, if I felt like I wanted to change it, my backup was this, which is that I think that in the latest single, Helder's drumming is actually more inspired by jazz music, and those drums are much harder to do than the earlier stuff, so he is more prominent. That would have made me sound like a dick, so you're lucky that I went with Pretty Visitors. So.
Yeah, it's just a good job you didn't say it, isn't it? Bloody hell. That would be awful.
Yeah. Edit that.
Yeah.
Edit that.
I'll stick that on the list. So mine, weirdly, is it's a little 3-second bit in Balaclava off Favourite Worst Nightmare. Now the Shaggers perform and the daggers are drawn. Who's the crooks in this? Do crime.
Yeah, that's a good one. No, that is a very good one. And there's a million fun ones, isn't there? And there's a million. I mean, I think the Pretty Visitors one's like fun. That song or the drums just always amaze me in that because I just don't know. And I think they just surprise me. I think there's the drums on is it D's? Not D's for Dangerous. Dangerous Animals. There's a drum fill in that as well, which is incredible. But yeah, no, if, like the fun ones. Oh my god, yeah, we'd be here all night if we could go through like the little. I think that like many other bands that you hear, their timing is so impeccable that they just have all these random stops in. Which anyone that has been in a band knows it's pretty hard to just have those kind of stops and starts and stops and start. Your timing has to be impeccable, really, doesn't it? To have those moments where you can just stop the music and start it up again, and they can do that live, and it doesn't seem like they just seem to know like when they're all going to come back in. It's weird. It's amazing. I always put it down to the fact that they learned together, and maybe they've kind of tuned in to each other's sound because they learned together and they've kind of just got on the same wavelengths. Like
it's almost telepathic, isn't it?
Yeah, like when women, it's periods, they kind of spend too much time together, they connect. I think the Arctic Monkeys have got the musical equivalent of that.
I wouldn't know. I've never been near any women. I'm Alex Turner off the first album. The women won't let me anywhere near, mate.
Yeah, well, I'm Alex Turner off AM, so I can feel it. No, I'm joking. I evolved to that. No, I'm Alex Turner on, so I can see the ever the love sap.
Yeah, the wistful love sap.
The wistful love sap. Yeah, that's me.
The love sap is a little place where we can get together.
Oh, very nice. And on that note, I think as we go to our sixth lyric of the evening that we referenced accidentally,
that is, and we're not even on Arctic Monkeys lyrics now. We're on the B-52s lyrics. We should probably wrap it up before probably wrap it up before I move on to Rock Lobster. Right. If you by some miracle have tuned in and listened to this, thank you so much for listening. Do not forget to follow us on Twitter. Follow us at Arctic Podcast on Twitter, and you can email us. Get in touch, please. Just tell us what's going on. Not in your life. We're not interested in stuff like that. Well, we are a little bit, but just get in touch. We are at arcticmonkeyspodcast at gmail.com. And if you're lucky, we may read some of your comments out on the upcoming shows. We will be back next week with a deep dive into the Beneath the Boardwalk demos. That is the tracks that weren't album tracks on Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not. So we've got a fair bit to go out there. So we're off to go and listen to that on a loop now, aren't we? In our separate homes.
Yeah, we'll listen to it, and I should say as well that this, this first one's a meet and greet, is a bit free flowing, whereas the other ones will be a bit more structured and a bit tighter as we go through the songs. But well, much like early Arctic Monkeys, it was free flowing and a bit punk. We just went for it. Whereas the next podcast will be more tranquility based, and they'll be much more structured and well produced, is what I'd say.
Yeah. Jazz podcasting.
Yeah. I almost said it's Terry Wogan then. Thank you for anyone that listened. And I think, obviously we'll be doing the deep dives in the song, and I hope that you can join us. Come and join us for a little while. No, that's not. I didn't get the lyric right, did I? Tried to do our last lyric, tried to end it out. So yeah.
See, people need to know that we're not infallible. People are looking at us thinking, "Oh God, look at these behemoths. These guys know the stuff." Well, we know sod all, guys.
I think people are suspecting that we are Alex and Helders with some kind of something over our faces. So they need to know that we can be wrong. We can be wrong. It's come and join us for a little while. Oh, it's come and stay, isn't it? Come and stay with us. Yeah. I got it wrong twice. That's embarrassing.
By the time we get round to that album, mate, you'll have got it.
Tune in next week to see if I've got that. Yeah.
Yeah, and do not forget to like us and follow us on Spotify. And if I don't think there's a review function on Spotify, that's just on Apple and Google Podcasts. But just
thank God.
If you do like it, tell someone about it. Tell a friend. If you don't have any friends, then just sidle up to a stranger on the bus and tell them about it, because you never know, they might also be fans.
I tell you what, if you think you've got no friends, if you're an Arctic Monkeys fan, you've got at least 2 friends to listen to every week.
That is the best place to sign off. We will see you next week, folks, where we will be discussing Beneath the Boardwalk. Say goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye.
Bye. Don't Believe the Hype is hosted and produced weekly by Nick Lee and Dan Holt. The music used in the titles is royalty-free music courtesy of Les FM. Don't forget to subscribe on your podcast player of choice to be notified every Wednesday when a new episode is released. And if you want to help us out further, be sure to like and review to help make us more visible to like-minded souls. We will see you next week with more of the same.